So, what credit score do mortgage companies use to determine whether or not to approve you? So, we'll unpack that plus a lot more today on the new episode of the Joe Credit Show. So, little disclaimer, let me get it out the way. This is not mortgage advice. This is not financial advice. If you need the advice of a professional in the mortgage space or the financial space, seek the advice of a licensed financial planner or a licensed mortgage professional to get more precise information as it relates to your specific information. This video is general information purposes only, and no promises, no guarantees are made in this video. All right, so now that's all out of the way, let's dive into first topic at hand, which is what credit score do mortgage companies use to determine your approval? And so for starters is basically figuring out the two predominant players that are using the credit scoring space. You have FICO and you have Vantage Scoring. So FICO's been around since early 80s. Vantage Scoring Solutions has been around since like late 2000s. And so FICO's pretty much owned this space. In fact, 95%, probably even more than that, of mortgage loan originators use FICO score versions. There are a few banks, I probably ran into a community bank or a local credit union, here and there that are using FICO Vantage Scoring for mortgage lending decisions, but the majority of the space is owned by FICO. So now that we know that it's FICO that pretty much owns this market, and by the way, Vantage Scoring, just so you know, Vantage Scoring is probably going to be the credit score you see online for yourself quite a bit, whether you're monitoring your credit scores through credit card statements like Capital One or any other credit card companies that are out there that provide credit scores for you. Discover, I know, provides a FICO 8 score, or Credit Karma. Most people have Credit Karma these days, and Credit Karma is going to be a Vantage score. So what FICO score version, which is another thing, do mortgage companies use? So mortgage companies will use older versions of FICO versions 2.0 for Experian, FICO version 4.0 for TransUnion, and FICO version 5.0 for Equifax. And FICO has, right now, as of today, they have 10 different versions or 10 different iterations of the FICO score model. Vantage has 4. And FICO's latest version 10 and 10T, that actually should be coming out this year if it's not out already, has not been released. And so now that we know what version mortgage lenders are using, again, that's 2.0 for Experian, 4.0 TransUnion, 5.0 Equifax. A good question is, why do they use different score versions for mortgages? Well, and a lot of it has to do with customer requests. And by the way, customers are going to be like lenders and banks. Those are typically the customers of credit scores because they're the ones buying the scores and buying the credit reports. And so the lenders typically, what they want to know is, what is the likelihood that this individual is going to default on a mortgage loan within 90 days or less, right? What's the likelihood of repayment on a mortgage loan? Whereas a credit card company may not care too much about the likelihood of a default on a mortgage loan. A credit card company probably cares more about the likelihood to default on a credit card or the likelihood to max out a credit card. So there's different score versions to basically allow different variables to be weighted differently. So for an example, utilization is probably a little bit heavier on FICO 8 versions, which is typically going to be the version that credit card companies use, and maybe not weighted so heavily under FICO 2, 4, and 5 for mortgage companies, because, even though it's important, it is going to matter, but it may not be as significant or may not be heightened up on FICO 8. Because it's not, they're not basing the approval on the likelihood to default on a credit card. They're basing the approval on the likelihood to default on the mortgage. And so that's why there's different score versions out there, because they're tailored by industry. They're tailored based on certain events that are likely to occur. And credit scores are just a quick way for a lender to make a decision. We're in a day and age where people want fast and quick decisions made. People hate waiting. People don't want to wait 7 days to know whether or not they're going to be approved. So that's why credit scores exist, is to really help make a quick decision, typically on the spot, whether or not someone is eligible for a mortgage loan or a credit card or so on and so forth. So now that we talked about what score versions mortgage companies use, now let's talk about what actual number are mortgage companies actually looking for to base their approval. But first, before I do that, I want to just remind everybody that if you are currently stuck on your credit, you're wanting to fix it, you're wanting to repair it, but just, you're just feeling stuck, don't know where to begin. There's just so much information online, even my information. What do you believe? What do how do you take all this information? You may not even have time to consume all this information to get started. Maybe you just don't have the time to actually work on your credit, but deep down inside that it's something that you need to do, but you've just been putting it off because you just don't know who to trust. You don't know where to go to get some help. You don't have the time to start doing it yourself, but it's something the back of your mind that you need to take care of. Well, I want to offer you an opportunity to get some free information on my website, to get some more tips, more resources, more helpful guides and instructions to unstuck yourself when it comes to your credit, because you don't want to let that thing fester. You don't want to let bad credit sit around and you're still financing auto loans and trying to get credit cards and trying to get mortgages and the score hasn't really moved much. You're going to pay more in interest rates. You're going to get decline left and right. Those hard inquiries are going to set you further back. You need to take care of it. So go to joechavarria.com/links for some helpful information. There's some articles that I post. There's videos on there. There's helpful resources and guides, free tips. Even if you wanted to monitor your credit by a more professional organization compared to Credit Karma, get all 3 bureaus as opposed to the 2. There's a link on there to do that. And if you just want to also have a professional look at your credit report with you, break things down for you and come up with a game plan, come up with a strategy to get your credit moving in the right direction, there'll be a link in there as well to schedule a complimentary, no obligation, no risk credit review with one of my professionals at the Credit Agents. So again, go to joechavarria.com/links to get access to all these goodies, all this free information that's out there, and to take advantage of all the credit opportunities that exist to unstuck yourself, get your credit moving in the right direction, and not prolong this scenario, especially if you're trying to buy a house down the line, trying to get a better interest rate on a vehicle. You don't want to wait too much longer because it's just costing you more and more money as you're waiting and financing at higher rates. Okay, so now let's discuss what score do mortgage companies want to see to base their approval. Now we know the versions that they're looking at. They're looking at FICO. They're not really looking at Vantage. The majority of lenders are using FICO version 2, 4, and 5. Now, what score are they typically requiring? So it just depends. Now, again, speak with the loan officer to get more specific information because no lender is the same. All lenders are different. But let's kind of touch on FHA loans, for example. Those are kind of the most common loan types for first-time home buyers. So FHA, which stands for Federal Housing Administration, FHA guidelines require a 580 FICO score. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that every lender is going to take 580. It just means that's what the federal government requires because the federal government basically backstops and guarantees these loans. And so they have their requirements to issue mortgages under this type of loan type. And there's other programs. There's USDA loans, there's VA loans, there's conventional loans, jumbo loans. All of them have different score requirements. But I'm just picking on FHA for a little bit because it's pretty common. And so with FHA, the mortgage companies are going to have what's called overlays. Overlays are basically like their requirements on top of the federal guidelines because these are requirements that work for their lenders, their banks, their investors, right? This is what works for them. This is the risk that they want to take on. This is what they're comfortable with. So most mortgage lenders are going to be somewhere in between the ballpark of 580 to 640 on an FHA mortgage loan approval in terms of the score requirement. And again, it's FICO mortgage, it's FICO versions 2, 4, and 5. And so if you want to check out your FICO scores, I'll talk about where you can go to see those FICO mortgage scores. There's really only one place to get your FICO mortgage scores. I'll talk about that here in a bit. But so basically, you want to also understand that the mortgage, you have 3 credit scores, you have 3 credit reports, 3 major credit bureaus. Of course, you have more than that, but in terms of what matters, there's actually 3 major credit reporting agencies that have 3 different credit scores, 1 per bureau. And so the mortgage companies are going to need to see your middle of the 3 of those scores to meet the criteria. So, for example, let's say that one lender requires a 620 mortgage credit score. Okay, 620 FICO score. And your Equifax score is a 650. Your TransUnion credit score is a 540. And then your Experian credit score is a 630. Okay. So in that case there, the 630 would be the middle because 650 is the high, 530, I believe I said, is the low, but 630 is right in the middle. So that's your middle score. And that score, the middle of the three, is what the lenders are going to base your approval off of. That needs to be above or at what the mortgage company's requirements are for in terms of scoring. Okay, there's other variables like DTI, debt to income ratio, things like that. But when it comes to credit scoring, the credit score requirements, it's going to vary by lender. Like I said, FHA generally it's going to be between 580, 640. Again, mortgage. So if you're having your credit scores checked on Credit Karma and you notice you got like 640 over there, again, keep in mind Credit Karma is Vantage scoring, not FICO scoring, not even FICO mortgage scoring. Okay, so you want to keep that into consideration. If you want to find out your mortgage credit scores, I would recommend going to myfico.com. Now, they don't pay me. I'm not an affiliate of that, so I don't make any money if you go to myfico.com. I wish, because I send a lot of business your way. But myfico.com will provide you access to your FICO mortgage scores, your FICO auto scores, your FICO bank card scores, FICO 8 scores. All different types of FICO versions will be made available to you via myfico.com. They do charge. It's not a free website. They charge, I think, $30 to $50 a month for their credit scoring and credit monitoring services. I use them myself, but it's myfico.com. And I would recommend that you do that. I would recommend that you set up an account with myfico.com prior to you applying for a mortgage. Why would I recommend that? Well, if you're just kind of guessing if you're going to get approved or not, and you get declined, then you have a hard inquiry on your credit report. It probably would be better if you have questionable items on your credit, or you're not too sure about your credit score. Probably would be better for you to go to myfico.com first, take a look at your FICO mortgage scores, and then determine whether or not you should move forward with an application, or should you work on your credit a little bit more. And of course, if you're stuck on that, again, go to joechavrier.com/links to get some information on how to get yourself unstuck and get